Okay, hello and Jai Jinendra, everyone. It's April 2021, and I'm sitting in my home in Colchester and about to have an uh, amazing conversation with a young artist, Deshna Shah, who is a student at Oxford University in her final year. This is part of our series on migration, on in particular the migration of the Jain community and the oral history, the memories, the experiences of migration. And no, it is so. I'm so excited today to have Deshna with me. I'm fortunate that I have seen her grow from childhood because her parents, Suken and Monica, are dear friends of mine. And her grandfather, Dr. Naresh Shah, is quite a legend in terms of the Jain community in Manchester, a pioneer, and has had a vast influence on the migration and settlement journey in Britain. And then Deshna has also got grandparents in India, so we'll bring out the story, the India dimension in that. But what is fascinating, and Deshna is actually the first artist we are interviewing for this series. And what is fascinating is that for inspiration for her art, Deshna draws from these the diverse cultural experiences, including growing up and living in Manchester as part of a minority ethnic community. So it'd be very interesting to see how her experiences are transformed into her art. Deshna, welcome. And I went through
Yeah.
your CV briefly before today, and I was really amazed by all the things you have achieved in such a short life. For example, in A level art, you got 98%. That's not mathematics, people. A level art, she got 98%. That means that you probably blew away your teachers by what you produced. But, more importantly, what is so exciting, Deshna, is that when we all go back to India and we visit our stunning Jain temples and architecture and see the paintings and the sculptures, we are really moved. But then somewhere along the line, we've lost the thread because as a community, we don't do much new art, or at least not professional art, maybe art as a hobby, as something to enjoy and relax with, but professional art. But you are, or you have chosen to continue that vast ocean of tradition into into a career, into a full-time career. And for that, I have amazing. I'm just full of joy, really, because I have been wanting more and more young people from our community to do a diversity of pursuits, including the creative arts, because we need a variety of people to build an ethical future. So tell me a little bit, Deshna, about what inspired you to pursue this career and journey.
Sure. So, I'd like to talk about just generally a bit more of my background. Um, Luckily, I've grown up in quite an artistic household. Not that anyone's an artist, but my mum always encouraged us to paint as children, both my brother and I, and she would paint beautiful paintings and encourage us to look at the heritage sites in India and take us on the trips to actually understand our culture a bit better. Same with my dada. He was in general, he was very supportive of my art journey. And through GCSE and A level, I realized its power, the power of art to kind of either heal communities, unite communities, or generally just communicate ideas. Um, and that power, I realize if I harness, I can really use it for my own community. I can, which has not been kind of utilized in the past. This kind of community art. So I started off with in my A level project. At that time, there was a lot to do with Syrian refugee crisis on the news. So I decided what could I do to try and make someone's story heard. So I started off by doing interviews with refugees who were currently residing in Manchester, and then I saw how much it meant to them for their story to be heard. And ever since then, and knowing, there is a certain limited time with recording voices of, for example, elderly people. I started recording, even not knowing what I do with the recordings and the material. I used to record conversations I'd have with my nana and my dada, and both sets of grandparents on both sides of my dual life, half in the UK and very much also in India. And I asked questions of how they found migrating, how did they find moving from one country, do they miss home, what do they miss most? And responses that I got from my dada were just small things, but so I needed to find a way to unite a community that was so kind of dispersed in Manchester. For example, he could only do it, I mean, he thought he could try and do it in his local community in Manchester. So I think that's why he started the Jain Community and Jain Samaj. Um, and gathered a couple of families who now, so it's such a um, central point of my childhood. And now the fact that it's now so important to people of 2 or 3 generations now below, not below me, but like, um, you know, it's still going and it's still such an important center. It's just really exciting and really nice to know. And for art in general, I thought that if I can do anything, and if I can make my voice heard, it will be through the medium of art. And I remember my dad and my mom saying, if you're going to choose art, make sure it's the best. You're doing it at only the best place. So I thought, okay, well, the challenge is set. Here we go. And I thought, where is the best? I'm going to apply there. And I worked hard. I actually am diagnosed with dyslexia, and I know that's a taboo, not taboo, but it's hard to talk about and it's hard to kind of acknowledge in the South Asian community. But that meant I had to work differently, smartly, outside of the box to try and get where I am now. It's often not diagnosed or kind of shunned away, but actually I consider it my superpower. It gives me the ability to think outside of the box naturally, have interpersonal skills, and just you know find other ways to communicate other than the natural like reading and writing. Um, and ever since then, I've realized into my newer projects where I've been asking people to write letters to me that they would never actually send to the other person. So let's say they'd write a letter to their father, and they'd never send the letter to the father, but they'll send it to me um, as a form of, I'd say, airing out any issues. And it's and I have to mention I do anonymize them as soon as they come to me. And most people reply to me saying this is the most therapeutic thing I've done, because quite naturally in South Asian community there's a lot of unspoken and issues, intergenerational issues, lack of communication, and it's so important for those things to be recognized and learned about and actually understand that it's more common than uncommon between families.
I
So
mean, yeah, that is one thing that I found about your personality every time I speak to you. You know, you ooze compassion. You know, there is a kind of a deep kindness about your personality and character. And, you know, we're living, if we look at the kind of world we're living in, one of the things which we are weakest at is compassion, you know. And yet, when we look at the Jain tradition, you know, compassion is very deep in our culture and heritage and tradition. I have myself been actively involved with the Arts Council. I've been the chairman of an art gallery. And even when I've tried to introduce compassion and art together, right, it's as if I'm saying something quite new and something that they haven't heard about. But ours is the art of compassion. And it's quite interesting that from a young age, you yourself were interested in your grandparents' stories and experiences. I mean, we are at the moment trying to say that let's preserve the stories of the elders, so that one day when the young people wake up and are interested, the stories are there waiting for them. But you have been interested in that right from the beginning. That's very extraordinary, really. I mean, can you say a little bit more about kind of what excited you about those memories? Why were you so keen to learn? And how is it that these memories, including your work with Syrian refugees or the letter writing, that they inspire you to produce new art?
sure. Quite. I live in a joint family, I guess. Or I live with my grandparents, my dad and daddy, and that's a normal setup for a lot of uh, I'm going to say Jain, but generally South Asian families. And that kind of bond that I've developed my entire life, you know, coming back home from school with my daddy with a glass of water and a snack, it, I wondered how that stems, like how that kind of structure stems. Where did it come from? And it's it's like hundreds of years old. This idea of living with your family and having this community and having that strength and bond in the community that I haven't actually felt as much in different communities if I compare them. And that's quite unique to, people ask me, oh, you still live with your grandparents or your grandparents live with you? And it's such a strange idea for so many people, but actually it's given me such a kind of huge um, scope of knowledge that I don't think I would have got any other way, and wisdom that you get when you sit and listen to these stories um, that only your grandparents can tell you. And a lot of people don't really have the patience for it, and I know that. But I really enjoyed listening to the stories, and I couldn't cope with it not being noted or shared in some way. That's a that celebrates their life and their achievements because they are so grand. If it's, for example, like Dada having started organize the Jain Samaj in Manchester, or if it's my nanny, my mom's mum in India, being such a scholar, learning, having the, 5 languages, at her fingertips. So it's just it's really interesting to understand how they've come to where they are. And because it's only actually just it might be just me trying to figure out more points of you know more parts of my own story and my own background. And to me, uh, I really just wanted to listen.
Mm. So what you're saying is effectively your upbringing and your home life was filled with compassion and kindness, especially from your grandparents. And effectively that became a kind of normal for you, and you wanted more of it and you wanted to give it to others. And in a way uh, that is what has encouraged you on this artistic journey. I mean, yeah, you got 98%, and then you got admission to Oxford University in fine art. I mean, it's one of the best places, but also we come from one of the best cultures of art in the world. Let's not deny that, right? I mean, we have always understood storytelling and art as central to living a life of peace and compassion, and and we have always tried to beautify whatever we do, even our rituals, our engagement, our prayers, our manuscripts. People may ask us to spell the word Jain, but were they to explore Jain from the inside out, they would discover that wide ocean of art, and art which has also adapted and evolved through time, changed from one part of India to another. And now you are kind of bringing that arrow to Manchester, to Oxford, to the United Kingdom. And I know, I bet you are upset. I always get disappointed when somebody asks me, what is Jainism? What is Jain? So how do you find that experience of trying to fit in to this kind of elite art world that is in Britain? That is almost like on show every day, very glamorous Tate Modern or the National Gallery, very flashy, very professional, and also, may I say, very white. I mean, it's widely accepted that the art establishment in this country is controlled by one culture, and change has been very, very slow in the coming. So how do you find that experience of having that deep sense of art and compassion, which actually is needed for the future, and then encountering a culture which looks at you differently and treats you differently?
Yeah, I actually have found it has been quite difficult for people to understand why I choose to make art that is based on, putting community first, you know, because people want to look at a very one-dimensional way of, one perspective of what art should be, and if that's about textures or colors or vibrancy, but actually not looking into um, the context and the concept as well, because for me, art is for the community. It's for me that's when it means the most, when it can change or heal or just unite. And I keep saying these three things because it's the most important reason for me to create art, and that's why a lot of my art is just community based. I'll go out into the community. I've done it different occasions at the Whitworth, um, at the Saatchi Art Gallery, and I choose to get involved in that way because that's what I think it brings the most happiness to me and also to general community. Um, but it has been a struggle. It has been a struggle because you know I am actually one of the only South Asian artists at the Ruskin, um, and we haven't had that much material, so I have not had role models. It's like I'm creating that path by myself, really, for someone else to come and be like, that's where I can, it's possible. And and I actually think about it quite often, and I think I get messages from mums from the Jain Samaj in Manchester saying, we'd love you to do um, something to do with art for our kids. And I think, well, those are the kids I want them to feel strong enough and brave enough to come and also do art and also use this as a form of communication rather than just a hobby. And I get that what the issue is that it's not as stable as some of the other um, career paths that people choose, engineering or being a doctor. Whereas we can only, it's high risk to go into art, but it's also high reward. You know, it's incredibly rewarding to choose something that, you know, gives back as much as you give. It's like, you know, working with children or working with the elderly, working with people who have dementia. It's just it it tests your skills at the same time as making sure other people are involved. So I definitely think there have been challenges for me, and I have to find my own resources. I have to go and find my own connections. Whereas, like, you know, I've been taught in quite a lot of depth about different other forms of art, black art. I've been taught about like different, you know, trends and things like that. But I've never had one resource that's been based on community art or South Asian art. So I've had to find that myself. And I was actually quite close to giving up. And I remember having this conversation with you. So, you know, it's so difficult and it's so pressure to try and convince other people of why this art is important. Um, that type of pressure, it's, you know, it's very testing, but it's kind of also, you know, having conversations with people who do believe in me makes me want to fight even harder for that path, for other people, for myself, and generally the future of art in the UK, the West, and generally
Wow.
the
I
art,
mean,
community
yeah.
art.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that not only are you a minority as an artist, but the road to art is also not opened for you. It's because,
Yeah,
you know, two things need to happen. I mean, you know, the Arts Council is very big on diversity. It keeps on hoping, you know, diversity is important. It's this, but you know, I've been at those strategic meetings, Deshna, and I don't think they understand it. They talk about it, and they talk in terms of quotas or, you know, but really, for example, let's take the example of faith art, for example. That's almost a no-no so far as the British art profession is concerned. Yet you look at the history of art anywhere in the world, and faith is right in the middle of it. So they're not even dealing, they're trying to disrupt from that history, but at the same time not having a direction of where they're going. And here is somebody like you who is trying to continue a thread of history, right? And bring that spirit of compassion. You know, we are in a pandemic right now, Deshna. In a pandemic, people are saying now that we need kindness, we need compassion, we need love, right? And yet you are experiencing those barriers. I mean, it it kind of beggars belief, but at the same time, you know, we know from colonial history, we know from, I know as an academic and a social scientist how hard it is to be an authentic Jain scholar, you know, where you speak from the inside out rather than the outside in, right? It's a real struggle, and you constantly have to kind of perform and prove yourself and almost show that you have something new or different to offer, and it's tiring. It can be very tiring.
I was going to say actually that idea of performance is something that I had to kind of overcome. Um, I'm only probably one of the only South Asian artists that was in my year, you know, the only one, and also generally you can't. I'm not seeing any other. There was no role models. I was kind of playing what I thought tutors wanted to see, the institution wanted to see. I created this kind of performative version of my culture that was not in its truest form, and it wasn't authentic in any way. In fact, it was probably more on the appropriation side of my own culture, the side I didn't even understand what I was creating. So I'll put it in more context. Like, um, I was creating art that tutors would want to see, that was faster, more vibrant, um, um, just stereotypes of what South Asian art should be, or what a white or Western audience wants to see. And I realized only after going to certain, an exhibition in the Whitworth Art Gallery in Manchester, Rack's Media Collective, um, Twilight language, I realized at that point, this is what South Asian art can be. It has the power to be digital. It has the power to be all forms of art, and that really encouraged me to look into the different forms of how I can use my art, not just um, traditional techniques as many people wanted me to create. Sorry, you can ask more questions if you want more.
Yeah, I mean, I think no, that's quite interesting. I remember the Singh twins and their journey in art, which was 20, 30 years before you, 20, 30 years before you. And they struggled when they were at art college and art school. They struggled to put their authentic art on show, and the teachers were almost stopping them from being themselves and from being from trying to fuse their traditional art with some of the new techniques that they were learning. And there is a deep kind of insecurity in the profession, I find, in the British art profession, about art that is different, which actually is surprising, because that's the platform where you're supposed to be different, right? And then this idea of faith art, where how can you put belief on show? How can you? How can you? Yeah, preach through your art. But all, in a sense, all art involves some kind of a message. uh, and then, of course, yeah, I mean, it can sometimes be quite frustrating, actually, because I have this saying that look but do not touch. There's so many aspects of Britain are on show. Basically, you can look, but you're not allowed to touch, you're not allowed to engage, or you're not allowed to be a part of, even though you are as British as anybody else. And you have been influenced by Britain in your history and heritage. So yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
admire you, but I also think, can you talk a little bit about the notion of creative space? Because I'm really frustrated that as a community, we don't understand how important it is that artists have that time to think, the time to develop, the time to watch, observe, assimilate, and invest in that time. We are only used, the kind of art we're used to is performance art. You pay a musician to come and perform at a wedding, and that's it. But if that musician were to create a new album, a whole new repertoire of music and song, they need time and space. It's not just a machine that can be so how can you tell the community a little bit about why it is important that artists have space?
Yeah, for sure. It's quite funny how every time I say I study, first of all, it's like, oh, I go to the University of Oxford. Everyone's like, yes, very good. And then they say, what do you study? I say, fine art. And they go, finance.
Oh,
And
oh.
that's finance? No, not quite. It's always, it's so many different occasions it's been replaced with finance. I think the reality is that, as you had mentioned, a lot of migrant communities, their kind of ultimate aim is to try and find stability. And that fear of lack of stability stops them from risky paths. And I think it's more important than ever to support younger artists, especially from communities where it's not um, supported as much as other subjects, um, for us to get a springboard to a more stable position. Um, I think the fear is because we have not created that space. It's always that's how every situation goes, where the first few take the big risk, make the big risk, um, and get the highest rewards, but then kind of stabilize it for other people coming up. And I think that's why more people should trust their instincts, and if they want to be an artist, trust that that's an important gut decision. And the more people are in it, the more it will become stable, and you have a chance to communicate. There's lots of people go into English, studying English language, and that's their form of communication. And I think as much emphasis should be given to people who choose art as their form of communication. Um, and there's so much to be done. There's a lot of work to be done in the art world, um, and we need voices there. We need support to actually make our ideas into real life.
Yeah.
Um,
So you mean you kind of need funding for to have that time to be able to think and to create and to shape new art, not art which is copied or art which is just done for a short-term performance, but art which fuses some of the challenges of migration, the challenges of assimilation, the kind of the diminishing of faith. Like, can you spell the word Jane? I mean, it's when you know Jane from the inside, it's the insult of insults, to be asked that question. And yet, as a community, we don't seem to be too concerned about projecting that voice and saying it out loud, and making sure that we influence the education, we influence the arts, that we have a role to play, not just in business and the professions, but also in public life in a variety of arenas. Yeah, so, and in a way, great art is born out of great frustration as well, right? It's a
yeah,
paradox. Yeah.
it took me 3 years. It took me 3 years, really, to feel comfortable. I was on a whole journey. First year, I was just felt like a fish out of water. Um, you know, Second year, probably similar. It's only really in my third year where I thought I am frustrated. I need to create a space because I know other people need to. It took me 3 years, and I feel very privileged that I've been given this chance to have 3 years to talk, to try and develop my own art. Otherwise, I could have easily gone into economics or something to do with. I could have as PPE, but the reality is that I was privileged enough to have 3 years to concentrate on my artistic space, but that was kind of ring fenced into as a space for me to concentrate. But after I graduate from university, I sense stability that will, you need one springboard to another. Really, just graduating in itself is not enough. Artists, especially artists who are not supported um, financially or just generally by the community, it's it's the pressure, and it's not just financial pressure, but it's that kind of, there's an idea of guilt that, oh, I've gone and done a fine art degree. I feel guilty that I'm not immediately this most successful um, artist. That I want to. There's this idea that I have to prove people right. Prove people wrong for going into this unstable um, career path. I need to prove people that I'm either the best or there's this idea that there's a guilt and a self-doubt, so that if I had more financial kind of support in my kind of early years of leaving university, starting a job, I think I would definitely be able to quadruple my output and really reach out to the community where it's needed. It's really needed, because the reason why I feel so strongly about this is because I've seen that as evidence. I've got over 25 letters written, and I plan to do this on more of a global scale and get hundreds, thousands of letters, as many letters as possible, because I realized upon reading these letters, it's the space that this artistic space is needed. And I also you're talking about issues with face art. I don't reach out necessarily to one face. I want people, especially in South Asia, to understand there's multiple different religions, but we actually have a lot of common, qualities, common issues, things that need to be overcome together as a community as a whole. That this kind of team and sided thing doesn't work. And I want women to come together. I want people who are second or third generation in Britain, they should come together. I've had people come up to me and ask me where I'm from. Other South Asian people ask me where I'm from, and if I say the wrong answer, they'll not talk to me, which I find really strange, because we're all British, and we're not fighting our grandparents' fights. That's not for us to do. So through this letter writing project, it's called Dear Dear. So it's the idea of dear being costly as well. It's a costly letter. If it was exposed, yet it was done in a way that's confidential, and it's done in a way that people should feel safe once they've written it, or an act of therapy, to be honest. And if a woman who's gone through a similar thing reads another woman from a different faith, from a different country's letter, and actually has a lot of similar, things that happen, then there's common ground. We actually find out we're more united than separate. So that's kind of the aim. And
can you give can you give a couple of examples of those letters? Just, you don't need to read the letter out, but just what the story is, so that we get to understand what you mean by how revelatory and healing that letter and the power is.
Okay. Can you see this? Are you able to? Oh no.
Shall I give you the screen? Oh. You want me to give you the power to share your screen, isn't it?
Or I can send it in the chat, and then.
Okay.
I can send it, and then if you put it up on the screen, that could work. Oh, being disabled. Sorry. I think you might have disabled the chat.
Why don't you talk about it, Deshna, about the letter?
Sorry?
Why don't you talk about the letter?
Instead of sending it.
Yeah.
So the letters are actually a hybrid of the three. I basically anonymize all the letters that come to me in a language that I've created. I call it the Twilight language, based on the ancient tantric language, the Twilight language as well. But it's my own Twilight language because it's my hybrid kind of, not like cultures, which is Gujarati, from my dad's side, Hindi from my mom's side, and English. And these three languages are I've grown up with, and they give me different kind of stories to tell. And through creating this hybrid language or alphabet at least, it's personal, and it also has it's a common dyslexia as well, because this idea that haha you need to come and try and uncode it this time, not like me having to uncode all the different languages I've dealt with, but also this idea of um, the language being protected, and the letters being protected with the languages. So it would be great if you could see. I can try and send it really quickly to you. We'll only take a second.
Can't see it.
It's sent by email.
Oh, by email. Sorry.
No problem.
Yeah, I can see it. Now I'm going to try and share the screen so that, yeah. Okay, can you see it, Deshna?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So this is,
Double click on it.
the detail is lost a little bit because it's a picture, isn't it?
Yeah, is it possible you double click on it? But if not, then it's fine. So yeah, so this is, you can see closely that it is this kind of hybrid. I don't know, maybe you can recognize little elements of Gujarati or Hindi and English that are just all kind of merged together. And actually, this, you know, there's different themes for the different letters I get. Some of them are about issues with, you know, intergenerational issues. Some are to do with marriage. Some are to do with expectations, and you know, these kind of strong beliefs that parents have for their children. That it's basically people want to just write and be free of these kind of thoughts, and have it written down somewhere. And I don't necessarily always reply to them and keep that conversation going. I'm simply a space. I create a space. I like to see myself as a mediator of these of sort, and sometimes people just want to be listened to, which is um, quite something. So yeah, now it gives a little bit more context to this idea. And so some people, when they see them, they see it as an I. Some people see it as a type of like kind of meditative like qualities. So I really appreciate when people relate or get moved by certain elements of my art. Sorry, I think you've muted yourself.
Intentions of migration probably come out in those letters, yeah?
Definitely. Um, so there's one letter to someone's father, who there was a lot of resentment. Actually, there was this idea that there's a feeling of why did he always want to go back to his homeland? Why did he always want to go and send money back to India when his life was here? So this idea of migration really came through at that point, where what a certain generation has always got a longing for going back, even though they might have been here for 50, 60 years, or they still have this idea that India is their home. There's a missing piece that is left, and then the idea that this person's family believes that they should forget about their home, or try and readjust and believe that Britain is their only home, which is a really it's difficult, because I don't think we can ever really forget that we have a different, or we come from a different heritage.
Mm. No, that's very helpful. Thank you. I mean, you already alluded that we are a very financially driven community. So if I were to ask you from that perspective, I mean, if we were to invest in creative artists and help them have that artistic space, what is the return of that to the community? So for example, supposing we give you a scholarship for £30,000 to do, fresh art over a 12-month period. Now, can you say at the end of 12 months that you will repay 300,000 to the community in terms of, say, savings in mental health, or savings in terms of uh, child abuse or child neglect or teenage angst or marriage breakup? Could you say, could you articulate some kind of financial return in inverted commas for that investment?
Interesting question. What they say about art, you can't put really a price on it. And I think that goes for the same with this. I think the 30,000, or however much you suggested, would be a scholarship. That's not only, however much you invest in mental health, it comes back in different ways. Let's say this letter project reached out to every single person, and everyone chose to write a letter about someone they've never been able to talk, face to face about. That probably calms them down. That probably allows them to really evaluate how they feel. And that might mean a saved marriage. That might mean a better relationship between a father and his son. That might be a better relationship with how someone feels guilt, or how they deal with doubt. And each, how much would you say confidence? What would you pay to have confidence? How much would you pay to have confidence? Or how much would you pay to remove your guilt? How much would you pay to remove your doubt? Like, there's no amount for that. And having that space, is that not a form of attempting to remove that guilt or doubt or lack of confidence? So that's how my answer. I can't say much more, but I think that would.
No, and I would also add to that and say that, if we look at our own history, millions, if we keep on making lots of money and saving it and passing on to the next generation, they say the first generation makes it, the second generation spends it, and the third wastes it, right? So investing in culture is, in that sense, the highest investment. Investing in art is the way to push that generation into the future and give it that confidence and that strength to move forward positively. So in that sense, it's a, if we look intergenerationally, it's a very high return investment. And I think that you mentioned Rax Media Collective. I had the good fortune to open one of their exhibitions at our gallery at first sight. And in fact, it was about the role of the Indian soldiers in the First World War, Indian soldiers and Indian migrants in the First World War. And I spoke to them about young people and art. And they said to me, you don't need to give them money forever. You just need to support them at that critical time in life when they're trying to make a career out of art. He said, once you give them that support at that critical time, they will make a future for themselves. And you are actually exactly at that juncture. You're about to graduate. I don't want you to slip out of what you've already done. And I understand the huge kind of capital you're bringing to the art, and this is what we as a community need, because you will also encourage other younger people in the process. You will also educate others to say it's okay to have an artistic career. It's good to support artists. Megraj Art Gallery was an art gallery inside a Jain bank in central London, Megraj Bank. It's closed now, that bank. But when it ran, it gave a platform to many artists. And I've used to go to their exhibitions, and even the people working in the bank found visiting that exhibition gave them peace, and gave them a
Yeah,
break from the routine kind of life of transactions and calculation and administration. So it's so important. And then when you become a celebrity, which you will, then we can all say she's one of us. We made it happen, we facilitated that. So I think
yeah,
there's so much joy. And also I keep telling the community that if you pick out a young person and say, I want you to become an artist, and here's 30,000 pounds, that transformation won't happen. But where you have a young person who's already decided they're passionate, who's already got tremendous skill and a track record in art, so they're already, if you like, fully molded and ready made. All we need to do is to catalyze that. Then it's a perfect opportunity, and I will, after this film is done, we will, and my team will promote it, and we will try and knock on a few doors and say, here's an opportunity. It's not a cost, it's an opportunity.
yeah.
you know
I think, as you just said, it's a catalyst. We're just speeding it up. We need that initial support. But again, as you said earlier, and I mentioned earlier, there is literally no price for positivity, and it will always come back tenfold. The the more you invest in trying to make sure that you know the route is positive and enjoyable, the more it will come back to you as a reward. It's rewarding, and I completely agree. I think supporting young artists is so incredibly important, especially in the West, where it's not so common for people that South Asians to get into this field. Very uncommon, and there's a lot more road bumps than other career paths. So I support it entirely. I think I will try and fight my hardest to continue
Mm.
this.
I mean,
this
yeah, only last week we had the government publishing a race report which caused a huge storm in the country, right? I mean, these are the experiences we are living through, and we as a community are extremely talented. we are extremely well endowed and resourceful. And if we put our minds to it, we can help our own young people. We can use our networks, our contacts, open doors for them. Give them words of encouragement, smile rather than, oh, you're an artist. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's more of a story thing. I was gonna say people, a lot of Jains invest a lot into temples, and then you have to ask why. What is what is you know what are temples doing for the people? They are often a space created to make sure there's peace of mind, but a lot of young people are not engaging with temples for whatever reason. Um, but they are engaging with art. They're trying to anyway. I found a lot of people are ready to engage in this letter writing. People my age, people who are younger than me, they're ready to go and write a letter, but they're not ready to go to a temple or go to a mosque as such. Like whatever the institution is. So why invest? What are the reasons to invest? You want to try and make sure that the space is there. Ultimately, a temple is a space for creating peace of mind. I mean, hopefully people get that encouragement to then go to temples or go to places of worship eventually, but that's not the reality. And the reality is that people are more likely to engage in somewhat therapeutic acts such as writing or engaging with the arts. So investing in art is more likely to be having a more immediate effect um, than maybe. I mean, I think it's great to invest in temples, but if you're looking to reach out to different audiences, then your way is through art.
Mm. And you mentioned peace of mind. I mean, mental health is a national crisis,
You
and
know,
young people and mental health is also a national crisis, and no community is immune from those issues and concerns. So here again, and you've done some fantastic work with people, with elderly people suffering from Alzheimer's, or with people having mental health challenges, using art to kind of heal, if you like. And so there is a practical value in that also. uh, and your point about peace of mind is very well taken. Even working on a piece of art, whether it is professional or just for relaxation, can itself give a kind of peace of
yeah,
mind. So helping artists like you to do workshops in the community, to work with young people and children and elders, that itself can spread that peace of mind very well. So,
I really do hope so. I really hope so. I think it's important from day one to your last day. It's incredibly important. Um, at times where people can't see that, I found that whilst I was working in the care home as an activities coordinator, at times where people can't see their own family, who can't and they can't talk, they can't, they're bedridden. But one of the only things they can really, that you can see the light kind of shine in the eyes is when someone engages in, speaking, know, spoken poetry or reading out passages, and I consider that all art. This, an artist has created this poem, or someone who's created a creative mind has designed this form to communicate, and I consider that art, and the fact that they engage with that, or they, if only they might not be able to speak, but they're able to move their hands, they'll enjoy painting, and that act is therapy. It's them remembering their um, childhood, or that's them remembering um, their careers, and it gives a sense of dignity as well, because I there was this one man at the care home who painted a car. Let's say he just a simple car, and I asked him, whose car is that? And he said, that's my car. That was I was a plumber. That's my van. And he said, in my van there are tools. And the fact that the art had allowed him to access those memories again, even with dementia, is just so inspiring. It's so rewarding when someone thinks, this is beautiful and I've created it, or this is my creation and it's something I hold dear to myself. So there's that idea of reward, self-worth, dignity. Yeah, I just think it's a fantastic thing to invest into.
I
And
mean, your
art.
grandfather, I remember the story of your grandfather, Dr. Naresh Shah, recently having a stroke. Now, here's a person who has given so much to the community, and you took time out from your university to be with him and to help him come out of his shell. Can you tell a little bit more about what you did and how you helped him to recover
Um,
himself?
so he actually lost his vision, or his vision became very, very poor, and he had a couple of strokes, and actually we get into car accidents. So there's a lot of different issues that had happened, and at that time, one of the biggest things that was getting him through the day, keeping his mind active. And I thought no one else is able to do it. No one else is really going to give that same amount of patience and one-to-one attention as I have with my grandfather, because I have that bond. And if it meant that my duty called, it was something I just thought was so incredibly important for me to do. So I used to sit with him. He'd listen to Jain lectures on YouTube for half the day. He could listen. He really appreciated that. And then maybe what we'd do is we'd listen to some music, or I would ask him to just tell me about his past, and I'd record them. And that act of recording was really important for him. I'd ask him about what he thought about me going into art as a subject, the importance of art. Um, I asked him about how he came to creating the Jain Samaj, um, and those conversations kept him going. Honestly, he's the strongest soul. Really is a fighter, and now he's, you know, it's amazing to see how much he's recovered.
Very good, very good. So thank you so much for being so open, so engaging. Thank you for your precious time. And thank you for being open about how, art can heal at a very practical level, to all kinds of people. That's really, really helpful. I mean, what do you think as an artist about this project we are doing around migration and memory, and trying to capture that memory through interviews, through photographs, and videos, and trying to protect that history? Uh, what do you think about that project?
I generally think it's an incredibly important project, and the fact that it's being a more, you and your team has created a more kind of formal and collated way of trying to get oral stories, because I haven't. I'm trying to do it, one to one with my grandparent, with my granddad. But I was so relieved to find out that this is going on a bit more of on a bigger scale, and I think it's incredibly important, not just because it's each person's story should um, be heard, but for the people who are not necessarily listening right now, in 10 years' time, they might want to listen. 20 years' time, our generations to come might want to understand, how did we come to this place? How did we, end up in this spot right here? And for that, you need to understand, you need to listen to stories like this. It's incredibly important. We've kind of not had that history written down in any book. I've never read anything about someone from a Jain background. let alone not just Jain, Hindu background, and any Indian migration story. I really haven't as such. All I have done is hear it from my grandparents, and that's not really enough. I think we need to understand a bit more. Um, so what you're doing, I really appreciate it. I think it's a fantastic project, and I'd like to support it as much as I can.
Oh, thank you. Well, you're doing it right now. How do people find out about your art if they want to support you? Do you have a website or? Uh,
So currently I have an Instagram, so it's called Deshna Art. But also I should mention that I started a platform. I don't want to call it a business. It's a platform that is designed for people who are from, I don't like the term person of color or BAME or anything like that. I prefer the term a Western minority or ethnic minority, because really on the grand scale of things, we are not a minority. um, so yeah, so it's for people who are of Western ethnic minority backgrounds, backgrounds similar to mine, and who want to have a platform after university or in their early careers, and who want to either show their background and biography and have a platform to show their art, but also if they need that financial support, they can sell the art through the business, through the platform. Because it's all good and well thinking that art is not related to money, but everyone needs everyone needs to be able to,
hmm.
you know, keep afloat.
So what
And
is
so I just mentioned that, yeah, it's called This Era Art.
this?
This Era Art, and it's just www.thiseraart.com.
Okay, perfect. We will also put the link when we put this video on YouTube. And I think that again is a remarkable example of you not only trying to help yourself but also help other artists open a platform for their art. So it shows that your grandfather's community spirit, and I remember how dedicated, because I've known him for 40 years, how passionate he was about building a community, about helping others, and he's a medical doctor by profession, Dr. Naresh Shah. But also at the same time, he would give selflessly to help others. And kind of that spirit is also flowing through you in terms of you creating an art kind of market, for people.
It
So
runs through my blood. Yeah, for sure.
yeah. So Deshna Shah, thank you so much. And we look forward to keeping in touch. And we hope and pray that your art continues to grow and flourish, and that the community uh, rises to that opportunity to support your art, that rare opportunity to support your art, rather than keep the money in the bank account. Okay, all the
I
very
really
best.
hope. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.